Well, hi, good afternoon. My name is Leah Conklin Olson, and this is our webinar, Teaching Foundational Reading Skills for Adult ESOL Learners with What's Next?
Hi,
And
everyone. My name is Darlene Pedersen, and I'm with New Readers Press, and I'll be assisting Leah today. Before we get started, I did want to go over a few housekeeping things. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to write your question in the chat. We'll be answering questions throughout where I'll stop Leah at an appropriate point and we'll reach out and get some answers to your questions. I also wanted to let everyone know that today's session is being recorded. We will be sending the recording along with the slides and handouts and any information that Leah has to share with everyone. We will be doing that, and you'll probably get that sometime next week. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Leah. She's been in the adult education field and an ESL instructor for over 25 years. She's the author of our What's Next, books 1 through 4 that you're all familiar with, and most recently the sequel that came out in 2024, books 5 and 6. She's also worked on our Bridging ELLs to GED preparation, and she's also been a learning expert for the student books Future Advanced, a book by Pearson. So she is very well versed in this area, and she's very eager to share and talk with all of you today. Leah, thank you
great.
and welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. It's great to have everyone here. Our objectives for today, we will identify components of the What's Next reading series, identify key areas of foundational reading skills for whole, part, whole sequencing, explore activities that focus on the whole of foundational reading instruction, and then explore activities that focus on the parts of foundational reading instruction. Let's just use the chat, and I want to get a sense of how much experience you have teaching the following things to emergent readers. There are 5 items, and so in the chat, you can write 1 for little to no experience, up to 4, a lot of experience for each of these items. So, for example, if I put in the chat that I have a lot of experience for all of these, I can move over to the chat and put 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. Now, I better have a lot of experience if I wrote the book, right? But of course, there's no shame in having less experience. That's why we're here today. We're just trying to do the best we can and learn as much as we can about this difficult venture of teaching reading, especially at the very beginning levels. Right, just kind of looking through. I have some experts with me. Fantastic. I will appreciate your help and any questions that you have for me, as well as some folks that maybe haven't taught this kind of reading instruction previously. And as we go through, please, as Darlene said, put some questions in the chat and she will let me know that they're there and I will address them as well as I can. And of course, we will have some time at the end as well for other questions. And I'm willing to stay a little bit after the presentation as well to make sure I get your questions answered. All right, fantastic. A lot of 4s. So that's great too. You'll get to see how all of the different components of What Next work together to provide a way for you to do the instruction that you already know how to do. So thank you for sharing your level of expertise. And let's start with identifying the different components of What's Next. So What's Next is a phonics-based reading series. It's research-based, originally from the National Reading Panel of 2000. And then more recently, don't ask me to remember the acronym. I looked it up, I memorized it yesterday, and I have forgotten it. NCCE 2016. It utilizes whole part whole phonics methodology, high interest, relevant stories, and it aligns with foundation reading standards in the college and career readiness and the English language proficiency standards, as well as the descriptors for the national reporting system. It features practices in developing phonemic awareness, sound and letter correspondence, decoding and coding syllable types and word parts. There are 6 books in the series at each level, introductory and low beginning levels. The scope and sequence for book 1 and 2, I don't expect that you can really read that here, but what I do want to bring to your attention is that they cover life skills topics and other relevant topics for new Americans or for emergent readers in the United States. So, and then book 2. In addition, they focus on target consonants and target vowel sounds. And this scope and sequence lets you know what those are and the sight words that go along with them. There's also a grammar point that can be focused on for the story. And then you'll see the CASAS topics as well. Books 3 and 4. And the slides, of course, will be available as well as the recording. And these scope and sequence documents are, of course, in the teacher's guide, as well as at the beginning of each of the books. And the latest books, 5 and 6. They run a gamut of life skills, including in book 5, you can see the one on saving and spending, where Samsam is getting a check and it works on some numeracy as well. One of the most important components after the student books is the teacher's guide. I would go as far as saying that without the teacher's guide, the effectiveness of just teaching from the student books is definitely impacted, and your effectiveness being able to manage all these components. It's really important to have the teacher's guide with you. In addition, there are workbook pages in the teacher's guide that provide more skill practice for students. So I really, as you'll see this teacher's guide throughout the presentation. And that's just because I think it's that important to make sure you have that when you're teaching this or when you're planning for teaching. And there's What's Next audio. The What's Next audio is available on the website. You download it into a zip file, and then it will have all of the audio for each book. Here, for example, we have book 1, and then we have lesson 1 intro. We've got a dialogue, minimal pairs, and then they're just named according to the activity that they correspond to. That can be found, let me just switch screens really quickly here. That is found on the product page of the New Readers Press website. So when you go into New Readers Press and you go into supplemental and you go into second edition, and whichever one you select, you will be able to see on the left side the extra resources. The teacher's guide is here, and the second edition audio, for example. There's also the first edition, if you're still using that. That teacher's guide is there as well as the audio. So here is a handy reference. These are going to be, I'm calling them at a glance. So keeping in mind that there are 6 different components that can be all used simultaneously depending on the activity and depending on your group of students. Since it is written as a multi-level um, reading series. The story is the same at the introductory and low beginning, and the different phonics and foundational reading skill targets are also the same. What is different, if you are familiar with using the series, is how students interact with the material and how they are supported with the material. So the introductory book has a picture story, whereas the low beginning book has a paragraph format. The teacher's guide has workbook pages with additional activities. And again, I just showed you where the audio files are. There are also scripts that are in the back of each of the student books that have answer keys for the activities, but also the script for any of the listening practices. If you're not interested in using the audio files, then you can read the scripts from the answer keys in the back of each student book. And then finally, there's the teacher's guide. There are general instructions up in the front. I wouldn't say exactly general, they have step by step, but they cover the content of all of the lessons in all of the books. But for teacher's guides, books 5 and 6, which is at the end of your regular teacher's guide, if you just keep scrolling through it, or you type in page 70, because I've been visiting that a lot for preparing for this presentation, page 70, and you'll get to books 5 and 6. These have an additional 2 pages of guidance as they delve into more complex foundational skills such as syllables and word parts. So whole part whole reading instruction, we're going to identify some of the foundational reading skills and how they're sequenced in this using this type of methodology. So before we do that, I want to get a sense of how familiar you are with phonics terminology. This is not so that you teach your students all of the phonics terminology, but that you feel equipped to have conversations with peers, other teachers who are instructors of foundational skills, so that you understand the descriptors in the NRS reporting system or the college and career readiness. Having some familiarity is helpful for those professional development experiences. So in the chat, answer this question 1 to 4. How familiar are you with phonics terminology? All right, looks like we have a few experts, but most of us are maybe more towards the beginning, in the middle. I'm going to put a link in the chat for a document. And this is more of a self-assessment for you. We're just going to take a couple minutes for you to look at it. Let me show you what it looks like first. Give me a second to click that link. Okay. Okay, so wait, I need to put the link as well. Give me a moment. All right, the link is in the chat if you want to open up that document, and here it is on my screen. There is a list of 20 terms that are often used for foundational reading skills and phonics instruction. And then there are definitions on the right for matching activity. The nice thing is that all of the answers are on the back. Right? So just take a moment to go, not a moment, let's take a minute to go through. I'm not going to be using all of these terms today. And the ones I do use, I will remind us of definitions as needed. But just peruse those and get a little bit of an idea of some of the terms and their definitions. We'll also take a minute to go through those one by one. I'm not going to read everything, but I will have them up here on my slides. And you can kind of double check your understanding of them, make notes of ones that you're less familiar with, and I can take time to help you out with those towards the end of the session. Okay, I know that wasn't 3 minutes, but there are so much, and a lot of you already have some expertise in that area. So let's just go through them. So phonics, phoneme, phonemic awareness, grapheme, morpheme, decoding. Some of the ones that we'll be talking about a lot today are the phonemic awareness, and decoding is another one that we'll be talking about a lot. Digraph, blend, diphthong, short vowel, long vowel, vowel team, onset, rhyme, word family. There are two different ways that the terminology word family is used. One way is for phonics instruction, where we have rhyming words, RHYME, that have the same rhyme, RIME, with a different onset. That's one way to use word family. I have also seen it used in reading instruction at higher levels, where we're talking about word families, as in they have the same root, but they have different prefixes and suffixes. So you'll have education, educate, educational, and they will consider those to be a word family. We're specifically talking about rhyming words today, words that have the same rhyme but different onsets. Prefix, suffix, syllable. Okay. Again, that sheet that I put in the chat is just for you to help you feel, be able to have some conversations and understand any kind of professional development around phonics instruction. So what we're going to work on today is we're going to follow the road to reading and writing, phonemic awareness, and this is often how not often. This is how development of reading happens in a first language, in a native language. We begin with phonemic awareness, the awareness of sounds and being able to hear the differences in sounds, where one starts and where the other where one stops and the other begins, and then moving into having a letter that corresponds with that sound, to decoding larger chunks, and then to being able to separate words into its parts. The whole sequencing that the series What's Next uses begins with the whole. It includes pre-reading, reading, and fluency activities, with the center at its center, with the lesson at the center, the reading as the context for learning foundational reading. And then it moves on to phonemic awareness and sound letter correspondence. When, as adults, when folks are learning to read, emergent readers, we slide between these again and again. So we're not learning all the phonemic awareness before we go to letter sound correspondence. We are reminding students of the sounds and helping them be able to separate them, and then moving on to sound letter correspondence. So it's a constant interplay between these two, but it's important to have an aspect of recognizing the sound before moving to matching it with a letter. And then moving to, part C, decoding and encoding. So now we're getting into reading and encoding spelling or writing. Moving back to the whole to do some fluency activities with the context. Keeping things relevant, keeping things fun, and building fluency in reading after going through these parts. Now, you may see that there's a D in the middle. D is a little bit higher level of foundational reading, and that is when we look at word parts and syllables. I usually go to the whole before I go to D and kind of go back to the parts. But it's not necessary. Some teachers prefer to go from C to continue working on the parts, word parts and syllables, and then going to the whole to do fluency activities. So let's explore. Well, first of all, Darlene, are there any questions that I need to address in the chat? Or does
There
anybody
was one question early
Mhm.
on that I
Sure.
didn't see was in the Q&A, and it just said, to be a teacher, which level should we be qualified?
Um, I guess I need a little bit more clarification on that question. And it looks like somebody else wants me to share. Oh, somebody did that for me then, it looks like. Share that document again. I'll just put it in one more time just in case. So I'm the level. I'm wondering if you mean like my level of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like where do you fall? Um, or if you mean introductory or low beginning text to use.
Someone put in the Q&A, are controlled, question mark.
Oh yeah, because that's on the document. So R controlled is, just very quickly, is a vowel that is followed by an R. You may have heard it called a bossy R. The R has its unique way of changing the vowel in front of it. And so syllables that have R control, the vowels have different sounds that are not necessarily the short sound or the long sound. I'm not touching that one in the chat. Um, Obviously, Minnesotans have their own way of pronouncing things as well. If since I didn't answer the question about the qualification level, if you could rephrase it and put in the chat, I will try to get back to that one later. Let's move on to the whole. And these are activities that are really around the context of reading a story, a theme, whatever it is, an experience reading about something that you just happened. I know that there's a language experience approach. You go on a field trip and then your students come together and they write about it. That would be the whole. For us in the reading series, these are the stories that the narratives about Samsam. And so kinds of activities that happen at this sequence at the beginning of our sequence of activities are pre-reading, vocabulary generation, reading for gist, and then reading for knowledge building. So these tend to be the areas where teachers excel in reading instruction, that people feel a little bit more natural with. So here's at a glance the materials that we'll be using. If you do a multi-level class, you can use both of these with students. So we've got our student story. There is not a corresponding workbook page, but there are audio files as well as scripts or answer keys, our teacher guide instructions, and again, if you're doing 5 and 6, additional instructions to help you guide you through that. So starting with the beginning, we start with that story. That's what whole means. We're working at the whole story. Having a pre-reading discussion, I like to think of this as activating the prior knowledge or building prior knowledge if it's not there. So a lot of these readings lend themselves to life skills topics. So think about some life skills topics that students have already studied and review with them that subject area. And that will help generate some of the vocabulary that they will see in the reading. So that's reviewing that vocabulary and then determining what vocabulary can be pre-taught. But this discussion really is about building prior knowledge or activating prior knowledge, and not based on the story itself, but on the larger theme. So, for example, what is a life skills topic that you usually cover that you could build prior knowledge for this story here? Hint, the story is about Samsam creating a to-do list for her life. If you want to just throw in the chat really quick, what are some topics that you discuss or that you teach in your class that would help prepare students for a story about Samsam creating a to-do list, or what we're calling here a checklist? Okay, it does look like that she may be shopping. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, a checklist with groceries. Exactly. That's a great way to bring to life what a checklist means. Mm-hmm. Going to the store, transportation, finding a job. Okay. Traveling, chores you have to do. Yes. The next part is vocabulary. Now, the idea of the previous discussion is to lessen the load on pre-teaching vocabulary. So then we choose some vocabulary, and in the teacher's guide and on the scope and sequence, you will see different vocabulary words that are identified for you that may be ones you want to pre-teach. So pre-reading, looking at vocabulary, what are some vocabulary words you would want to review from an earlier lesson or pre-teach for this lesson? My tip is don't overdo it here. Review important words and introduce 3 or 4 new words at most. The first time they read it, they may not know every word, but as you come back to it to read for fluency, they will gradually develop an understanding of all of the language. So don't expect a perfect understanding of all the words right from the beginning. In fact, if they know too many of the words from sight, they won't be practicing their phonics. Um, so some vocabulary words, just for time, I'll just highlight a few that are pretty obvious. Pregnant would be one. Checklist, somebody talked about using a checklist for grocery shopping. They might know phone, but they might not know that that's the word for phone. They might know husband, but they might not know that's the word for husband. So reviewing that, maybe plan. Oh, here's a good one, stress. And then making predictions, asking questions. So I'm just going to move to, I'm not expecting you to read all of this. This is cut and pasted from the teacher's guide. I'm basically just showcasing that the teacher's guide has this there for you to help you move through the materials. So elicit predictions based on the title and pictures. Have students discuss the pre-reading questions, and these are available at the low beginning level. Use the previous discussion and vocabulary to reinforce this one. And then reading. Reading for gist is to get what I like to call 50%. To get a general idea of the topic the first time. Introductory level students, if you read with them, read to them. Low beginning, you may choose to do that as well. I like to have my low beginning students try it on their own and reminding them that we will read it together, to eliminate some of the frustration they may have trying to attack it on their own. But give it a try. Do what you can. Don't worry. We will be working on it together soon. Remember, this is your very first time reading. First time, maybe only 50%, maybe only you understand just a little bit. Okay, then they read the story for gist. And then you'll check gist. And here's what it looks like. There is in the introductory book and in the beginning book a reading comprehension of teacher's instructions. So let's take a little bit of a look. For my low beginning, I like them to try the questions on their own first, whereas introductory, teachers will often read through the questions and have students answer what they think the answer is. The idea would to be hold off on checking accuracy at this point and go back to a second reading, which is building comprehension. There's so many different ways to reread. You can read it again for everyone. You can read it chorally. You can read it pair reading. Just any way you want to address it. You can read and pause and check comprehension and explain things, etc. And then going back to their comprehension and checking their answers and discussing the issues that they've had. Okay, so I want to spend the rest of the presentation on the parts. I'm going to spend less time on a few of them and more time on others. There's not enough time to spend a significant amount on each one. Let's look at the different parts we'll be discussing. Phonemic awareness, sound letter correspondence, decoding and encoding, and syllables and word parts. These are all the different kinds of practices that are available in the series. At an introductory level for phonemic awareness, we have count the sounds, blending sound boxes. These are recommended activities that are not in the resource, but that can be done on the fly. And then the low beginning includes a resource for word family and minimal pair sound boxes. At a glance, yes.
We have a question,
Sure.
and they said, to teach for true beginner ESL learners, should I need to do GED?
That's a very good question. I don't feel qualified to answer, but I do feel I don't feel qualified to answer. I think it's less about having a GED and more about having the ability to recognize what students need and know how to go through a curriculum or go through a process well and being able to respond to learners. I think if a person wasn't an experienced teacher and didn't have a teacher license or like a GED, for example, that it would require going through it themselves as if they were a student just to see how it works together. I think it would involve some training up front for themselves, professional development, but I do not think your level of expertise should, or your level of education should preclude you from using the resource. Phonemic awareness at a glance. One idea for phonemic awareness that's not in the book, but it helps scaffold for low beginning, and it also is great for introductory students, level students, is counting sounds. I think I have an example here. So we'll look at these two in a minute. And then there is a page in the student book for the low beginning. The reason this isn't in the introductory book is because it's just bringing one more. It's already difficult to do the phonemic awareness practice, and then you put it on a page for emergent readers, and it becomes more difficult. So this is really too hard to do at the introductory level, simply by the fact that it's been committed to a page. There's audio files and scripts, teachers' instructions, again, additional instructions for 5 and 6. So let's look at phonemic awareness. This idea of counting sounds with words students already know. Go, go. And be careful when you do your consonants. Most of you know this probably, but be careful not to include too much of a vowel sound after it so that it sounds as if there's another vowel between. Like go would not be a great way to do this, but go is a little bit better. Go. And then doing go, just kind of blending it more quickly, goes. And those kinds of practices, anytime you're doing a reading instruction or introducing new vocabulary, great way to get some phonemic awareness done. And low prep. So add, and they can show fingers, good, chin. Sound boxes, they can point to, you can start off with 3 sound boxes. Basically, they just have a paper that you can use over and over again, and they can point to the box as you say the sound or as they say the sound with you. Sand, sand, sad, etc. And then the phonemic awareness practice at the low beginning level. This is with word families, which one doesn't belong, basically. And they follow along here. This would be number 1, 2, 3. These are the answers for us, just in, not for the students, wouldn't see this. Sap, mad, sad. Sap is not. And so the first word is different. Actually, I did that wrong. I cancel that. This one is sap. This one is mad. This one is sad. Sap, mad, sap. These are separated boxes, so they each stand for a word. Which one does not rhyme is basically what we're doing here. And so they would cross out that the first word. When I teach this, I really, really like this, by the way. I know it's hard. When I teach this, it takes probably 3 lessons for students to be able to begin to do it on their own. I think it's worth bearing with it and doing it with them the first few lessons until they understand how it works. And in addition, with minimal pairs, this one is the boxes are connected, so they stand for the letters sad, mad. Where is the different sound? The X would go in the first box. After I do this activity, I have students write the words next to it, and then we go into letter sound correspondence where they can see how that is the different sound. Definitely take some practice. Try it out on yourself until you get the feeling for it. And then even if you feel like your students aren't able to do it independently, do it with them as a whole class activity. There are so few activities available for phonemic awareness. I'd hate for you to miss out on one of the few that are available. Okay, this is usually a little bit more familiar for people, is the letter sound letter correspondence. I use scanning. So going back to the introductory story and having students look for the target letters and vowels. And remember, in the scope and sequence, they are listed. Here also, I'll move forward where you can see this better. It does list for students what they're going to be looking for as well as the consonants on this page. So pay attention to that scope and sequence for what is being focused on, or the teacher's guide will also help. So let's look at sound and letters. So talking about phonics, introducing some pronunciation elements as far as how to make the sounds, given that different languages have different sounds and may not have, the same sounds. And so that is something that they need to learn as well. So there's a little bit of information about that in the teacher's guide. And here is where students could highlight. Target consonant digraphs is the focus for this lesson. So CH, look for words with CH, and they can go through and they can highlight anything that they have with CH. Okay. What about CK? I might have chosen the wrong one for this lesson because I don't see it. SH. Well, CH here. Yeah, I think I accidentally put the wrong target ones down here. I apologize for that. But they will have a certain targets that they will find, and then they can go through and, yeah, I think I did blends. I think it's supposed to be blends, STRS for this one, ST. Yeah, I just put the wrong ones down there.
Leah, could I interrupt for a question right now?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Thank you. Do you have any strategies for scaffolding quickly for students who don't understand the task when other students in the class get it right away?
Yes, obviously, I can't be one-on-one with every student. Once I get a feel for which students have trouble with the task, then I often group them together so that I can attend to them a bit more. Vice versa, if you can use that as an adverb. Adversely, I can put them in a mixed level pair where somebody can be the teacher for the segment and work with them. Those are really my two main strategies, and it depends on the other learners in the room. I do have some learners who really love to be in that teacher role, and I have others who would prefer to work on their own learning, and I want you to feel that out. I hesitate to always use my advanced learners to help others unless that seems to be a good instructional tool for that learner as well. But I like mixed same level groups as well. So same level groups where I can help out a little bit more with the activity. In the end, if it's something that they do verbatim with you and copy, then it just might take them a few practices and they will get it in after a few runs. And it's really about making them feel comfortable, even if they're not excelling at something at this point. Don't worry, you'll get it the next time. We're going to do this routine each week, so the next time you'll understand better.
Great. One more question, Leah. They wanted to know what level the book the example was from, I think on the previous slide.
Yes, I meant to explain that. So that is book 5. So the assumption is that students will have gone through 4 books previous to book 5. And books 1 and 2 focus on consonants. So they're introduced slowly to a group of consonants. I think it's 4, maybe about 4 or 5 consonants at a time per lesson, and 1 vowel sound. Short vowels for books 1 and 2. Books 3 and 4 go on to review the consonants, add in some endings and some digraphs and things like that, and then move on to long vowel sounds. So book 5 is now, we're looking at reviewing consonant sounds, reviewing digraphs and blends, reviewing short vowels, reviewing long vowels. So that particular lesson is reviewing short vowels. There's 2 lessons in book 5 that review short vowels. And that one actually was looking at blends. The following lesson looks at those digraphs.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, you can also do this practice. Here they're reviewing short A, E, I, O, and U, so you can go through and have them indicate where those words are. You can even have them shout out and make lists on the board. Then there is a practice. This one is in, I want to go back to that because this one is in the workbook. So this is the teacher's guide, one of the workbook pages. Awesome, awesome one. So make sure you have that teacher's guide with you. It is, let me zoom in a little bit on it, letter sounds. So you can use the audio file or you can read the script. And then students circle the beginning sound that they hear, the ending sound that they hear, and the middle sound that they hear. Decoding and encoding. Now we're moving into more of the reading where they're going to be attacking words. We have some encoding that is happening here in the introductory book. They have closed sentences that they'll be tracing. They'll have closed sentences that they will complete. There's some word family practices. The workbook has additional, and we'll go through each of these in a moment, teacher's guide, explanations, and additional information for books 5 and 6. So closed sentences. I know it's a little bit difficult to see, but what we have here are traceable words. Sure, now you can't see it at all, right? Okay, so traceable words allows the students to get the feel for encoding or writing. They have the word up here as well. The second line, depending on how painstaking it is for them, maybe just to copy then the word that they traced below or to copy the entire sentence. There's a lot that to be said for the actual writing and the copying and saying the words at the same time. It creates additional pathways to learning language that has been researched to be very effective. So it may seem like busy work to copy the sentence, but if students also are saying the word at the same time, it can be very, like I said, very effective, research has shown. And this one, they're filling in the blank using the words. These are the exact same sentences from the story. So now they're getting the story again in a different way and using their skills, foundational reading skills. This practice, I'm not going to read this, but I'm going to explain it on the next page. Pair work. Basically, you have this half sheet. Students fold this part right here behind. So I got my eraser. There we go. So let's say you have student A looking at this part and student B looking at the back that has the answer. So student B is basically the teacher, student A is the student. These are the same sentences. So student A would read the sentence by filling in the missing word. Student B would then ask student A to spell the word. So as I hold this up, I am looking at the word that needs to be put into the sentence. My partner is reading the sentence for me. And they say, Samsam is pregnant. And I say, please spell Samsam. S-A-M-S-A-M. Or if they make a mistake, I say, oh, S-A-M. And then teaching students to do that in pairs. And then word family practice. This particular word family practice is in the student book for low beginning. It's blending the sounds together to write them. We have the onset that is different, and then we have the rhyme or the word ending, word beginning, word ending, put them together to make a set of words that are in a word family. There's additional practice in the workbook pages of the teacher's guide. word family flashcards. Pair work again, A and B. One student is the teacher or whichever letter you want to say, and they point to the beginning consonant, and the other student says the word. So if I point, let me just grab this. If I point here, then that student says ram. If I point here, jam, Sam, yam. And then for books 5 and 6, these become more complex as we are reviewing all of the word families we have practiced in the previous 4 books. So this gets cut out and then it gets folded as you use each one. And the first one goes in the first column, the second one goes to the second column, and the third one matches. I just have students fold it because little teeny pieces of paper all over the place drives me crazy. So they fold it and then fold the next one and they go down. Another way you can do it is you can literally just have them write in it, of course. Both ways. I like the physicality of the manipulative of like moving it. And that's actually really good for those pathways, those neural pathways too for reading. Sight words is an additional foundational reading skill that is included. If we were to go back to the scope and sequence, and maybe I will. Give me a second. Let's see if I can pull it up really quickly. Sure. Here are the, just to reiterate, here are the phonics targets. So you'll find this in the teacher's guide, each book. So if we look at book 1, we have 5 consonants, 2 digraphs, and short A. Okay, so, but here we have a list of sight words. Sight words are important for, well, I'm going to say 2 reasons. There might be more, but sight words are important for 2 main reasons. One is they're high frequency words. And so if you memorize that word and you read it, it is not using your working memory. And it gives you more space, or it gives your student more space to focus on the words they don't know so that they can sound them out. If they're constantly sounding out the most frequent words, then it is really slowing up their reading process and they're not going to be able to comprehend as well. That working memory is really important to keep as free as possible, and sight words is a great way to do that. So memorization. There was a second reason. And now, often sight words do not follow the phonics rules. And so there are these odd words that no matter how many phonics lessons you teach, students aren't going to be able to pronounce the word, so they might as well memorize it. So again, working on sight words. I tried to do my best to find 10 words in every lesson that were high frequency and or hard to spell or didn't follow the spelling rules. However, as you can see, and I'll just point this one out, sometimes I needed another word to round out the list of 10. This word pregnant is not a super common word. You could call it a challenge word or a nice to know word. All right. We have just a few minutes, and that is fine. I just wanted to let you know, because could be its whole deal by itself, is this next part, syllables and word parts. This is where book 5 and 6 excels. This is where it takes the learners up to that next level, starting to move into intermediate reading skills. Or I wouldn't even say intermediate, high beginning. So I'm not going to go through all of the activities. You can look at these slides after the presentation. to look at some of the activities that are available. Again, these are specifically for books 5 and 6. Looking at different kinds of syllables, being able to hear, it's a bit of phonemic awareness, hearing the vowels. Each vowel is one syllable. So as you hear the vowel sound, that is how you can indicate how many syllables there is. There's examples of identifying, just beginning to identify the vowels in words so that you can identify consonants. Builds and builds each lesson until you get to the end of book 6, where you are working on syllable types. And the same thing with word parts. We're working on compound words, prefixes, suffix, common compound words, prefixes, and suffix and roots. Again, just introducing that, just building that skill to get them ready for that high beginning level. And there's a lot of practices. These are in the workbook pages of the teacher's guide, books 5 and 6. The last thing I want to bring our attention to is the whole. We did all those parts. It's time to go back to the whole. And that's when we do rereading and fluency activities. There are so many fun ways to do it. And I do want to bring your attention to one additional item. This has been added for the second edition of all books in the low beginning for books 1 through 6 is an additional dialogue. The dialogue reinforces the phonics from the story. It also reinforces the vocabulary and the grammar. So it's a great way to practice fluency by using pretty much all the same words, but in a different way. And so I'm really excited about that one. There's an audio for it as well. There we go. And so just rereading, reading that dialogue, and then the assessments. Quick look at the assessments, 3-page spread for the introductory students so that they have more space on the page. Everything is bigger, easier for them to follow. Low beginning, a 2-page spread. There are the audio files for all of the quizzes or the answer script at the end of each student book that you can use instead. You can also do journaling and discussion using some questions that are available in the teacher's guide. Great. So just a quick look at the skills assessments, answer key, script, options for journal and discussion. And that is it. So once you have your set of what's next student books, you want to download that teacher's guide. You want to download audio files if that is how you prefer to use the materials, though all the scripts are available for you as well. So just for lack of time, these are some of the things that I had hoped to cover today was whole part, whole sequencing, whole activities, phonemic awareness, sound and letter correspondence, decoding and encoding activities, and syllable and word parts activities. Never enough time for all of that. So I know this was a bit of a whirlwind. I just really encourage you to use these to get you, let me say discard, give me a second. I spent some time working on these because I thought they would be really helpful as a guide. So even printing off, this could be a guide for the different things that you could use at each part of the lesson, and then giving yourself some time to practice it, starting with a few parts and building from there. I am available for, I realize our time is over. Thank you for the extra 3 minutes. I kind of lost track there. I am available for a few more minutes if people have additional questions. Otherwise, Darlene, is there anything in the chat that I need to attend to?
No, I don't believe so. Thank you so much, Leah, and thank you to all of you for participating in our webinar today.